Hey guys, this is Matthias with Ally Gaming. My first experience with cloud gaming was with Stadia. Back in the day, in the early days of cloud gaming, I was very skeptical of, technically, how can you play a game running on a computer on the other side of the world? We're not going to talk about the technical stuff of cloud gaming today. I'm not that well versed into it. What I will talk about rather short is my first experiences in cloud gaming. Back when Cyberpunk was released, I had the Switch. That was my only device that I had at the time. I had a sort of a break from gaming for a few years there, so I only had the Switch. And everybody was talking about Cyberpunk. So when Stadia had this deal where you buy a game and you get the hardware, like the controller and a Chromecast, for free when you buy the game. So I bought Cyberpunk, played it through on Stadia, not once, but 1.5, almost twice, and it was amazing. I couldn't wrap my head around how this could work, but it did. After that, I tried Xbox Cloud Gaming, xCloud, or whatever its name is. I don't like that. I think Game Pass is absolutely fantastic. I love my Series X. I love Game Pass on the Ally, but I don't like the xCloud. I think that's really bad. Stadia was amazing, it closed it down. And then I heard about this service called Geforce Now. I've been thinking, how can something match Stadia? Because Stadia was to me the best cloud gaming service possible. And I didn't believe that Geforce Now could be as good as Stadia, but I was wrong. I was very wrong. This video is not about cloud gaming per se, or talking about Geforce Now or Stadia or whatever. I'm going to talk about a solution if you find your games are running crap on your Ally. I have to be transparent, so here's a disclaimer though. While Geforce Now is available in a free tier, we're going to talk about the priority and ultimate tiers now. I have a 3-month trial of ultimate that will be expiring in 2 days or something. I've been playing Baldurs Gate 3 on that. The second thing is that Geforce Now, it requires a internet connection. I've been using Geforce Now on a mobile internet from my phone. That's a 5G connection. Our Wi-Fi here is a mobile connection. So we have a mobile router with a 4G connection. And if I connect it to my phone, to my 5G connection, it works absolutely perfect. Geforce Now has a few different settings you can use. You can use balanced, data saver, competitive, and custom. And if you go to the balanced mode, that will draw 11 gigabytes per hour. It's a 1920 by 1200 on this screen and the Ally screen, since it's a 16 by 10 screen. It's 60 FPS, and that's the balanced. The data saver one, you will take 4 gigabytes per hour. That's 1280 by 800 and 60 frames per second. The competitive one is 1920 by 1200 in 120 frames per second, 11 gigabytes per hour. And then you have custom, where we can play up to 4K in 120 FPS. It will draw 16 gigabytes per hour. It's important to explain that if you're not on a fixed rate data connection, this will cost a fortune. But if you have free data, it's perfect. Baldurs Gate is one of the best, if not the best, role-playing game that has came out in the last few years, maybe ever. I've been playing it for close to 10 hours now. That's not too much if you compare it to how long others have been playing it, but it's such an amazing game. Let's do a comparison between the Geforce Now version and the native version running from Steam on the Ally. What I've done here is I've taken a few cutscenes because it's easier to compare them between the native version running on the Ally and the cloud version running on Geforce Now. I've also added a few scenes when I'm running around and playing, and I'm zooming in and out of these scenes to show you how crisp this is and to show you the detailed graphics. I tried to avoid spoilers here. Now let's get into Baldurs Gate 3. To the left here we see it running on Geforce Now, and to the right we see it running on the Ally. The Geforce Now settings is competitive mode. That means 1920 by 1200 at 120 frames per second. It's epic everywhere. Everything is turned on. And I get a pretty solid 120 frames per second. On the Geforce Now server, Baldurs Gate 3 here runs on a 4080 card if it's available, and the limit of the sessions are 8 hours. If you want to play for more than 8 hours, close the game down and start it again. You will get a new server. So in summary, what we have is the game running on a server with a 4080 in 120 frames per second with epic settings, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. If we look at the game running on the Ally locally, our settings is 1920 by 1200. The settings are high for model quality, detail distance, instance distance, texture quality, etc, etc. And for the lighting, shadows, clouds and fog, it's low. I got the AMD FSR set to quality, and I get about 40 to 50 frames per second. Sometimes it dips down to the 30s, but it looks good. It looks fairly okay. It runs well on the Ally on the small screen. If you use it in a docked mode like this, you will definitely see the difference between Geforce Now and the Ally. And it's kind of tricky to get the frame rates to come up to those levels that Geforce Now can handle. Another thing that's important to explain here is that when I run the native version on Steam, I have to run it in turbo mode, otherwise it will not look good. When I run it on Geforce Now, I can run it in silent TDP mode, which means 10 watts. I can play it in high resolution, 120 frames per second for maybe 3 to 4 hours, and it looks absolutely amazing. So to summarize this, I would say that Baldurs Gate 3 looks good on the Ally. It runs well on the small screen, but if you want a bit of edge, if you want it to look super crisp and super awesome, I don't understand how it can look this good. You have to try Geforce Now. It's super awesome. And the thing is, if you have a slightly higher latency, if you have a bad connection, it doesn't really matter with Baldurs Gate 3. If you have a sketchy connection in this, it's still playable. If you have a sketchy connection in Metal Hellsinger or Doom Eternal or a game like that, it's not that good. Finally, I would say that if you have the means to get the priority or ultimate version of Geforce Now, I would say get it, because it's like an add-on service that's really good. One thing to keep in mind is that with Geforce Now, you don't get the games. You have the games in your Steam library or Epic or other launcher. So what Geforce Now does is that it connects to your libraries and make them playable on the cloud. I hope that makes sense. If you have the means to get Geforce Now, get it, because this looks good on the Ally. I can't deny it. It's really good. That's it, guys. I hope this was useful information. If you have any questions, as usual, post them below and I'll try to answer them as good as I can. I would also appreciate a thumbs up and a follow. Subscribe if you don't mind. That would make my day. Until next time, stay safe, stay gold, and see ya!